Chapter 6. Doctoring. How does healing take place? Jesus took some of his disciples to another country where they found people healing the sick, and one of his disciples asked, "How can they do this? They're not one of us." Jesus answered, "Those who are not against us are for us." Meaning that if we have a like faith and a central belief system, then we are not against one another. And it is not the people who were doing the healing. The God they called upon was doing the healing. Native people of every continent go through their rituals, shaking gourds, chanting, drumming, dancing, trying to connect with the one who can heal. There are many factors involved, but the belief of the patient also must be there because that's what initiates the healing process. A man who was born blind was brought to Jesus. The first thing Jesus did was spit on some dirt and put it on those eyes. Then he told the blind man to go and wash in the pool of Siloam. And when he did, his eyes opened and he could see again. Where was the healing? Was it in the dirt? In the spit? In the pool? If it was, why don't we make pilgrimage to that pool now, or use the dirt and spit for blind people? Jesus, being the Son of God, had divine powers. He could have commanded those eyes to see again. He didn't have to go through all those steps, but he did. The placebo effect was taking place. Every step increased the faith of that blind man. This is going to help me. This will do it. 80 or even 90% of the healing came from within the patient. It wasn't the dirt or the spit or the pool. That patient had within himself the necessary power to open the way to make healing a reality. Suppose you had a throbbing headache and I said, "Hold this stick for 2 minutes and your headache will go away." You come from a culture that has to prove everything. This must square with that. So you analyze it, hold it. What in the world can cure me of my headache? The color here? The kind of wood? The length of the stick? You're still analyzing it, and 2 minutes later, you still have that throbbing headache. But let's say you respond with, "You told me that if I hold this, my headache will go away. I'll do that." Finally, 2 minutes pass, and sure enough, your headache is gone. What healed you? Was it the stick? The color? The kind of wood? You had it within you to cure yourself in the first place, and I just pressed a little button for you to make yourself well. Whether it's a physician or a medicine person, a doctor's own energy has a great deal to do with the healing process. You have to believe that the medicine is going to work out the way you're fixing it. There must be no doubt whatsoever regarding the chance and the knowledge of herbs that are entrusted into our care. The elders told us that when we're treating a patient, never let doubt come into your mind. This medicine was handed down from generations before us, and it first came from the source of all life. So, if you doubt, you're doubting his power. Don't project your own weaknesses, because you're not drawing from yourself, you're drawing from it, a higher being who has all the power necessary to heal. Don't ever think it might help, think it will. This has helped many people, it's going to help this person. If you have a negative feeling inside, the patient can pick up on that negativity. I don't care how wide the smile is on your face when you're attending someone who's sick. It's very important, whether you're a medicine person or not, to be positive force and initiate positive feelings in that other person. Your positive energy must go along with your own belief that this will work the way I'm fixing it. Attitude is part of the medicine, so you must have faith because all medicine comes from the same source. A gift of tobacco. We were taught that if someone wants to apply for our services in the medicine way, whether it be doctoring or teaching, let them offer tobacco. Just one small pouch is all that's needed. I once went to Argora Hills in California to do a house protection ceremony for a woman who had been having a lot of bad luck around her home. A mutual friend suggested she contact me, and he had told her that it's proper to give the medicine man tobacco. So as soon as I walked in the door, she handed me a grocery sack from Safeway full of Bull Durham tobacco. She never gave me a donation beyond that, and I didn't bother to explain that tobacco isn't payment for services. It's an integral part of the ceremony. It doesn't look like much when you give a pouch of tobacco to a medicine person, but it does a lot of things. First, it serves as a permission to appeal to the medicine ways. Even if the medicine way I perform takes only a few minutes, how long did it take me to be able to do that in a few minutes? And what sacrifices were made on my part in order to learn it and earn the right to use it? So the tobacco first is permission, but it's also my protection because I'm dealing with a great power in healing work. If I'm treating a serious illness, it's up to me to ground it, because if I don't, it's possible that it might get into my system. And if it's not grounded, the wind, even though the wind is my mother, might take it to someone in my bloodline. So that tobacco is protection for me and my family. Another thing that happens when a medicine person is presented with tobacco and asked for help is that his knowledge and training are activated. He shifts from being just an ordinary man into an instrument through which the great power flows. Which one of these approaches and techniques should I use in order to enable me to help this person? That tobacco allows me to come up with something that will work. It provides a way for me to connect with the patient and know what he needs. If the medicine I fix calls for tobacco, I will use the same tobacco the patient gave me. Otherwise, I don't need to do anything else with that tobacco after it's done its work of establishing the connection between us. And then, after that, in the tradition of my tribe, a donation of some kind is made. We never used to call this payment. We call it exchange for the medicine ways. The term in our language is helisagaga, goes with medicine. Medicine by itself may not work unless the patient or his family gives something in exchange for the medicine and what it took for medicine people to acquire the knowledge. My teacher told me that if someone gives you something in exchange, all right. If not, those medicine ways are alive, and whether the person puts tobacco in your hand or not, you try your best. Maybe some just don't have it, but they might bless you later on. You see, in a way of my people, it's hard for us to say thank you with nothing in our hands. We always want to give something in appreciation. In my case, I rely on donations because I don't charge money. My own people know the different types of medicine and what should be given in exchange, and they give accordingly. Back before money was giving, sometimes it would give a hog, several chickens, or some piece goods along with a ham. If the illness was such that the medicine man had to spend several days or even a week or more with that person, he would give as much as a team of horses. That was considered a fair exchange. It wasn't thought of as payment because medicine people never set fees. Our people just know what was an appropriate donation. Still, my teacher had already told me that this would happen, that not everyone would make an exchange, and it's not our way to ask. By not giving something in exchange, a patient clearly disregards what it took for the medicine person to attain the knowledge that helped him. If I didn't know much, it would take me longer to explain it, but if I know right away, it doesn't take as long to explain. I see this happen lots of times. He just spent a little time. because the society has time-oriented and people get paid by the hour. They don't know what sacrifices the medicine person had to go through, what a long time it took to get that knowledge in the first place. If they had to go to a health professional, it would probably cost $75 or up for one visit. 30 minutes time, you paid a full price anyway. Maybe they got more help from a medicine person than a health professional would have given them. But when it comes to time to donate something, there's a big hang-up. I don't take it as an affront personally, but sometimes I feel very sad about how people treat the one who really does heal and give. Is that all they think about him? How do they live their own lives? They have a lot of possessions, but who's behind them? Everything we have, materially and spiritually, comes from the Creator. People often seem to forget that. Those thoughts go through my mind many times. When it goes out after I've thought it, so put all this behind you. The medicine takes care of it down the road someplace. Go ahead and do your best. That's what my teachers taught me. Native Americans have used tobacco as an instrument of prayer for a long time. When they first saw tobacco, they viewed it as a very sacred, unique plant, and they knew that the Creator had some special purpose for it. They dried it, and they prayed with it by holding a piece of it in their hands and communicating with the Great Spirit, and they let the tobacco float gently to the ground. The method used today to dry tobacco has never been improved upon since Native people first dried it. It's just done on a larger scale. Eventually, we created a holder using oak leaves. We put bits of tobacco inside and rolled it like a cigarette. Later on, the sacred pipe was given to us, and we began using the pipe in communication. We didn't smoke anything like pot in the pipe. It was just pure tobacco. That's why this tobacco is very important in our lives. When things are not exactly as we want them to be, sometimes we say, "This is my situation. I need your help," and put the tobacco down on the ground, placing things in His care. Once I needed a center tail feather from an eagle for a particular ceremony. I was passing through Albuquerque at the time, and I went out to the zoo, to the aviary, and I held tobacco in my hand and spoke to the eagle there, saying, "I have great need for just one of your feathers. Somehow, through your relatives flying above, please make it possible that I might receive one feather. I will honor you and all living things with it, because I want to use it in a good way." Then I put that tobacco down, and I went on. Several days later, I returned home and found a package waiting for me. It was from a friend of mine, an Oklahoma artist I had once helped. When I helped him, he had given me what money he had in his pocket at the time. He wasn't really prepared, and I didn't ask, but in our Indian way, he knew to give something of value, so that wasn't all he wanted to give me. I unwrapped the package, and inside was a center tail eagle feather. So I immediately went outside, put down tobacco, and said, "Thank you." Whenever we pray for something and receive it, one thing that our people are taught to do is say thank you. When you do that, many more blessings come. If you ask and you get, but then don't do anything about it, He doesn't really appreciate it. It makes it harder to get other things, but the more we show our appreciation, the more blessings we get. People wonder why tobacco, which is sacred to Native Americans, plays such havoc with the health of non-Indians who smoke. For one thing, when my people pray by smoking tobacco, we don't inhale. Also, one of our basic teachings is control thyself. Moderation is a valuable attribute. Learn to develop self-discipline so you don't go hog wild with any one thing. You can overeat, oversleep, overwork, and overplay. Instead of recreation, which is based on the concept of recreation, it becomes more like recreation. So we live by the credo, all things in moderation. Water is good for you. We can't live without it. But try drinking a bucketful at one time and see what happens. You have to use some wisdom. There are all kinds of ways. Our people learn their healing ways by going up in the mountains to fast and sometimes having visions and hearing instructions, which they brought back. That's how we first learned about herbs and how to allow healing to take place. When the missionaries came to this continent, they said, "That's all superstition. We present this Bible to you. You take this Bible instead of all that superstition." So we took the Bible and read it and said, "Oh boy, what a bunch of superstition in here." "What do you mean?" "Here's manna falling from heaven. There's a burning bush that would not be consumed. And here's a Red Sea parting." "Oh, no, that's not superstition. What is it?" "God has the power to communicate in any method he chooses." "Well, wasn't God communicating with us when he spoke to us through an animal or a bird?" "If it's only superstition, then why has the United States Pharmaceutical Department accepted 637 of our herbs for use in modern medicine today?" They don't really have an answer for that. I have an eagle feather that I use in ceremonies. I can look at that feather and know who needs help in that ceremony without having to look around. I can put cedar down on the coals and use my feather to fan the smoke toward that person and help the situation without having to touch him. Long before the Chinese introduced acupuncture to Japanese, they had a method called cupping. They would take a cup-like vessel, put flammable liquid in it, light it, and then run it over the patient's body to get out negatives. We aren't that smart. Our medicine people use live coals. We put them in our mouths and blow on the patient. Or sometimes we remove poison from a person just by locating the area and sucking the poison out. It's said that my great-grandfather on my mother's side had a deer horn fixed so he could put it on the trouble spots and the horn itself would pull things out. He was in charge of that kind of power. My people have always considered touch to be therapeutic. If a certain part of the body is in pain, we place one hand in the front of the patient's body and one hand behind him. Then let the front hand push in as the back hand pulls out. Then reversing the hands, moving them back and forth like an accordion. That motion generates electrodes within the body. The patient can feel energy build up and there's a cleansing of the area that alleviates pain. 4 years ago, the chief surgeon at Johns Hopkins found out that when you do that, blood rushes in and alleviates pain. He told the nurses to do it and they're practicing it now. But my people have been practicing it for a long time. A lot of our medicine ways have disappeared. We had a real good medicine for diabetes, but the land where I used to get it has been sold and bulldozed over to build a shopping mall, and I don't know of any other place where it grows. My mother was a midwife who brought many children into the world, and she had many songs, which I never learned. To me, they were women's ways, and I don't know if anyone else knows them. She used one chant in particular to fix the kind of belts that a woman, after having born a child, wore around her waist to bring the stomach back to its natural shape. If a child had a stomach ache, my mother would sing a little chant and thump the child's belly 4 times, and the ache would go away. You see, a lot of things we can't even explain. We can't explain why an earache stops when there's no medicine, there's just a chant and blowing in the ear. What's happening? I have an adopted Cherokee brother who's a psychiatrist in Oklahoma. In Oklahoma City. We have a mutual friend we wanted to take lunch with, but when we went by to get her, she was going to forego that lunch because she had a terrific earache. I said, let me fix it. I said a chant and blew in her ear, and immediately she was all right. Oh, I feel better now. I can go. All during lunch, my psychiatrist brother was trying to analyze what canal and what anvil inside the ear were affected and how the healing could have happened. Even though he was a Cherokee with an Indian heritage, he grew up with the values of modern society. Everything had to be investigated in laboratories, written down, and answered logically. Fortunately, my people don't worry about trying to find out how things work. We don't overload our elders or teachers with why this and why that. We never question, we just accept. When I'm working with a patient, I first must diagnose the source of the problem because I'm going to try to treat the cause, not just the effect. Where does it come from? And maybe I just look without even speaking because I'm contacting the subconscious while the consciousness is somehow diverted. And that way, I know just about where the problem is. How I'm going to approach it is another thing. Some situations require treatment beyond chants and herbs. When I was living in Oklahoma City, I knew a doctor whose wife went into a coma after being in an automobile accident. She had been in a coma for over a week, and when he asked me to come see her, being a doctor, he had everything squared away with the hospital so that I can go in there with my paraphernalia. At her bedside, I prayed to the Creator, and I touched her forehead with my eagle feather, right in the pineal area, which many people refer to as the third eye. Each time I touched her forehead, I brought in energy from the four directions: east, south, west, and north. Then I fanned her with my eagle feather and told her husband, I'm going to blow my eagle bone whistle 4 times. Right now, another consciousness has taken over. Her own consciousness is still around, but she's not using it. It's taken off, and I'm going to call it back into her body. When I'm finished, I want her to wake up and be aware of things. Standing at her bedside, I blew the eagle bone whistle 4 times, to the east, south, west, and north. To reinforce it, I drove a few miles east, got out of my car, and blew the whistle again. Then I drove back to the hospital and did the same thing, driving a few miles in each direction and blowing that whistle. The next day, she came out of that coma and had regained 80% of her memory. 20% she doesn't really remember, but at least she was able to function again. While she was in that coma, her consciousness was still around, but she wasn't using it. It's analogous to getting hit hard on the arm and having it go numb. The arm is still there, the veins and muscles are still working, but it's numb. Proper circulation needs to be revived in that area so it can function once more. What I did was come in contact with that consciousness and call it back into her body so she could become aware again. The lonely road. Helping so many people can take a lot out of you. You're treating this one over here, and then you go back and someone else needs help. Dave Lewis told me long ago, I'm sending you on a very lonely road. No one will really ever truly understand you. You think they know you, but they don't know what you're thinking about. They don't know the feelings you have had. How someone, even in busy, crowded place, you need to make certain contact, and to do so, you need to be somewhat withdrawn. That's why In a social situation, it's very uncomfortable for you just to sit down and talk to pass the time. Oh yes, this and all that. Oh, isn't it wonderful? And my, I saw a beautiful chair in the store window the other day, and gosh, the way they were dressed. These aren't things you can relate to when you carry medicine. So it's sort of a lonely road. And in the end, it's worthwhile. It's all worthwhile. One time I had been up 2 nights in a row in all-night ceremonies, helping some people out. Then I drove home a little over 200 miles. Talk about tired. I was dead tired and I went straight to sleep. About 10 o'clock that night I was awakened and told, "Someone wants to see you." When I walked into the front room, a 12-year-old boy was waiting to see me. He had asked someone to bring him to my house and he was crying. "Could you help my grandfather? He's really sick. We think he's going to die. I love my grandfather and I don't want him to die. Could you please help him?" Tired as I was, I couldn't say no. I went with him 40 miles from where I lived, and it took 2 nights to attend his grandfather. Finally, his fever broke, and I fixed some soup with Chance to increase his appetite so he could gain strength. A lot of things were taken care of in those 2 nights. The life of a medicine person is full of such things, and if I had a chance to do them a little differently, I don't think I could. Everything is worthwhile. For those services, the boy didn't know about presenting tobacco, but he presented his heart to me, which was all right. He said, "I don't have much, but I have this feather. I want you to have it." That's the eagle feather I use today when I bless people, when I bless houses, when I bless different events. I always carry that feather with me because it's a gift, not only from a child, but from above. It made its way into my hands, and it's a powerful feather. You can feel its energy even before touching it. That's how things happen in the life of a medicine person. The sparkle in that boy's eye was thank you enough for me. I was glad that I was still around to help somebody like that. I once attended a ceremony for an old lady who was very ill. I looked down and saw a lot of troubled things coming out of her. More than any physical thing, she was sick with heartache. So I just put my hand on her head and I prayed in my own language. That was all I did. A month later, I happened to be in the same area that lady was up and walking around. I guess she had been out to the sheep pen, and on the way back she saw me. She didn't speak much English, but she hugged me and said, "Wait here." She ran and came back with a silver hat band and gave it to me. It wasn't the hat band itself that touched me, but the eyes that were saying thank you. I go to ceremonies where I sometimes hear people pray for me. We want him to live a long time, be with us a long time because we need him. That's the strange part. Like I'm supposed to live just because I feel certain needs. I'm not taking it wrong. I appreciate the prayers, but I remember one occasion when my Cheyenne nephew in New Mexico prayed for me. I want my uncle to live long and enjoy himself in life. He was praying for me not only to live long time so I could be of help to people, but to live the time when I could really enjoy myself. It meant something to me to hear such a prayer, that I could enjoy myself as a human being. And as a medicine person, I will always do that because I have a commitment. I have a sense of dedication to my work. But the prayer that I might enjoy life has a great meaning to me because medicine people get tired like everyone else. We have our ups and downs. When I was 10, I worked hard all day long on my 2-acre cotton patch. I was full of energy then. I could go for hours and hours, and when I went to sleep, it was a beautiful sleep because I had done something constructive, and in the morning, I was ready to go again. When you have a good purpose and reach for that purpose, it makes life worthwhile to live.